Being in the spotlight can be like a flame. If used properly, it can illuminate. If used badly, it can burn. Today we speak to Lillian Muli about her 15-year career in the media, the highs and lows, and what it takes to build a lasting career. This is She Means Business. I am your host, Claire Munde. Hi, Lillian.
Hello, Claire.
Welcome to She Means Business.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, now today we just want to have a discussion around your career and the media business and how it's evolved. And I think a good place to start is to just take us back. Today you do a show on Friday, but you have done so many shows, including a women's show. We can remember Slim Possible and so many other things. But tell us some of the pivotal parts of your career in journalism that have led you to where you are today.
My career in journalism spans, a long time. I think I'm getting into almost a decade and a half, having started at KTN. And of course, done a stint there that, was remarkable in terms of how it shaped me as a journalist. I, just taking you a little bit back, Claire, always believed in storytelling, even from when I was in school. And so for me, journalism was not about reading the news. It was about storytelling and, shaping opinion, challenging norms and narratives. And so just looking back at KTN, a pivotal point there was when I got an opportunity to just one story that I remember very clearly, and it was on a Saturday. There was almost 100 deaths somewhere in Chumvi at the Machakos junction. And it was a story about illicit brew that had caused massive deaths in that particular area. And here I was, a very young reporter in the newsroom, and I was given the opportunity to go and cover that story. And after that, I learned that, we had to go a step ahead to look at, permits. Why was illicit brew doing the rounds in that particular community? Why were these young men sinking themselves in alcoholism? So very early at that point, I discovered that, words carried a lot of weight in terms of how you told a story, in terms of how you challenged authorities to explain why this was happening within communities. And so when I did that story, that shaped the direction I wanted to take in terms of telling human stories. And there's many more that I did at KTN, and now transitioning into Citizen and continuing really with telling human stories, giving a voice to people who perhaps are often unheard. A young man dousing himself in illicit liquor. What is the story behind that? Is it unemployment? Is it that perhaps, he didn't get an opportunity to proceed to a higher level of education for whatever reason? So just being able to amplify these voices and find solutions, and then again challenge those in authority to speak into these issues and look at why they're happening. So that one of the remarkable beginnings for me that have shaped who I am today. And, the story goes on and on in terms of many other human interest stories that I've covered.
Okay. And now you've talked about storytelling. It's not just about reading news. What would you say have been the biggest differences between being a news anchor and being in the field, and what do you enjoy most?
Yeah. What do I enjoy most?
Between being in the field and being an anchor.
Mm-hmm. So I think they're really tied. It's almost, so one feeds into the other. As a news anchor, you need depth. You need to understand the content that you're relaying to the viewers. And so, you find that as a news anchor, if you're not on the ground interacting with these issues, interacting with these people, then rarely will you have a grasp of what it is that you're really telling people. And that is why, you find that a lot of news anchors easily go to the field, even internationally, when you look at things. Gone are the days of armchair journalism, where people would show up, look cute, sit, read a script that perhaps, they're only seeing for the first time. So, feeding into that content, internalizing it requires somebody to be able to double up as an on-field reporter, And as an on-screen anchor, it really adds value to you, because at the end of the day, then you know what is happening. Then when you're reading that story, you're owning it, because you actually have been part of the news-making process. And the news-making process is rigorous, right from the editorial planning, the meetings, into now the producers. Perhaps you as the reporter, being the producer, going out to the field and bringing that story to life. So for me, I would say, it's a close tie, but I love being out in the field, particularly doing stories that really capture my heart, stories that I feel that if I tell will make a difference, stories that will be an eye-opener in terms of issues that are actually happening out there that are rarely spoken about.
Okay, let's talk about staying power. You've talked about being in this industry for almost 15 years. And not everybody lasts within this industry or any other industry. What would you say are the factors that make one able to stand the test of time? When we talk about Lillian Muli, no one has to think twice. We know who you are. So what would you say are those factors that have helped you stay relevant throughout the years?
I would say consistency for me has come with discipline. And I remember, a chat that I had with and this was not a chat really, it was, we had a meeting, and one of our bosses said something, and he's a journalist, and he said something about, as a journalist, when you feel like the fire is dying in your belly, remember why you first started. And, we all have bad days. There are days when, you just, have that writer's block. Perhaps you don't really know the direction to take in terms of telling a story. But the fire in your belly, I will never forget those words. When you start feeling like you're losing the fire in your belly, remember why you first started. And for me, I started because I was passionate about this. I was passionate about writing. And secondly, public service, just being that voice that relays messages that will make a change, that will create change, that will educate, that will empower, and that will also hold those in power to account. So for me, the consistency really comes from always reminding myself why I started in the first place. I've stayed consistent this long because of the discipline, knowing that you have to show up, knowing that you have a huge responsibility on your shoulders. You carry a huge responsibility to tell the truth. You have a huge responsibility to inform, to educate, and to create change in society where things are not going right. So that passion, and of course, listening to superiors, people that have been in the industry, and picking a phrase like that once the fire dies in your belly, remember why you started in the first place. That has kept me going, and here I am today.
Awesome. Remember why you started. Now, we'll talk a little bit about the evolving media landscape. But before that, tell us a little bit more about those pivotal moments. You talked about, covering some of these things like the illicit brew. But what are those pivotal moments in your career that you just had a breakthrough? Because, I can remember you from Slim Possible, the women's shows and stuff like that. But for you, what were those ones that were like, whoa, they were just breakthroughs?
So, I'll tell you about individuals I've interviewed that have really, really stayed with me in terms of their impact and even to the viewers. But for me, a pivotal moment was the transition from KTN to Citizen. Here, I found a voice in the sense that I walked a journey with mentors, producers, just a collaborative effort towards finding a voice and finding myself as a journalist. Previously, I had done everything. I had done politics. I had done current affairs. Really, in fact, I started doing an art show as a producer, as a production assistant, and then found myself in the newsroom. But I never really quite knew what my voice was in terms of what I was selling as a journalist. So coming to Citizen opened my mind up to exploring and finding out who I really am as a journalist. And I found that telling the stories of people, just not going back to that particular story that I'd given you, but telling the stories of people was powerful, because people wanted to tell their stories. I remember one particular segment we started here called Your Story, where we'd invite viewers who had done remarkably well, who were going through challenges, to write us emails, and we would come to them and tell their stories. And in that, I discovered that people actually want to tell their stories. Claire, if I sit here with you and I ask you who is Claire, you will probably brighten up and probably spend hours with me telling me about who you are. So here I found an opportunity to tell the stories of people by making the microphone approachable. When you go back to Slim Possible, for instance, Slim Possible was not just about weight loss. It was about giving women a platform to be vulnerable and to own that vulnerability. Here we had widows, we had divorcees, we had women who were suffering from terminal diseases, and they were starting to speak out and share their stories. So giving people a platform to speak and share their stories. And you know, the story of Citizen TV is that we're mass market. We're watched by millions of people. So you're not just speaking to the elites, you're speaking to a cosmopolitan group of people. So here we were telling the stories of people who our viewers were resonating with in terms of them relating to the stories that these people were sharing. Very deep personal stories now on a national broadcaster being brought to life, and just seeing the reactions from people. Human interest stories get a lot of traction because people can relate to a mother who lost her child. People can relate to a man who is unemployed and still trying to feed his family. People can relate to the hunger, perhaps in a part of Turkana, because maybe somebody grew up in that hunger and is now a CEO in a leading organization. So that was pivotal. Walking the journey here at Citizen TV with people that supported me and allowed me to find my voice, because again, like I said, for me, writing about people's stories has always been a passion of mine. So storytelling, but amplifying that storytelling by giving people a platform to tell their stories themselves.
Awesome. Now you've talked about mentorship, and you know many people look up to you, but who are the people you have looked up to throughout your career, whether it's locally and even internationally?
Yeah. Well, locally, yes, mentorship has played a huge role in my journey as a journalist, Claire, and particularly within the media space as well. I've walked this journey with men and women who have held my hand, who have criticized me where I go wrong, but then again nudged me forward in terms of the right direction to take. So right within the industry, there are industry leaders who I'm very proud to say have really held my hand, and really you cannot do anything within whatever industry that you are in without having a mentor that has scaled great heights within that very same industry. But aside from that, I've learned along the journey of life that networks are really everything. And so away from the media as well, you know, I've got, for instance, I do a lot of public health advocacy, and so I've got doctor mentors. I do a lot of interactions around software and the digital space. I've got a software engineer who's a very good mentor to me. So different fields, different mentors, each shaping the direction my life is taking, career-wise, personally, you know, because there's, of course, that balance between personal and career. And so people that have really shaped who I am today, and that I'm incredibly grateful to.
Any that you want to mention that we may know of?
Oh, I mean, so many of them. I mean, some that I admire, some that I have interacted very closely with. My journey, I mean, my hugest, and I keep saying, I mean, this is a lady that really held my hand, and I'm, you know, eternally grateful to Farida Karone, our editorial boss then at KTN, who transitioned here as our editorial director. She believed in me. She saw that I had something going on, and she gave me an opportunity in a newsroom that was full of media giants. She saw, and I was watching her engage the other day, and she kept talking about mentorship and how you know, we should give back, how you should hold somebody's hand, give them a chance to prove themselves. teach them, guide them. And that's exactly what she did for me and many other people. Coming here to Royal Media Services, I mean, I have a great team of bosses and supervisors who have really been instrumental in my journey. Talking about Wachira Waruru himself, who I remember coming to Citizen TV, and I had just had a baby at that time. And I was so tiny. I was so small. I think I was about 58 kgs just after having my son. And he asked me, how did you lose weight this fast? And I told him I lost weight because I had to get back on TV and I didn't want to look a certain way. And he said, okay, so let's discuss what we can do around that, transition. You coming out of motherhood, I mean, having your baby and getting back into the workplace, new employer, and wanting to be in shape. And Slim Possible, was born out of that. But along the way also, in areas where I felt stuck, he's always been a person that I can really go to and will guide me accordingly. There are many here. I'm blessed to work with an incredible team from Freda Fune, Linus Kai, the entire team in the newsroom. We work with a great team of producers, editors, and again, like I said, whatever you see here, whoever you see as Lillian Muli is really the product of teamwork and a lot of support.
Awesome, awesome. And let me digress a bit before we go back to that conversation. You're talking about being 58 kgs after giving, hello, I wish. But let's talk a little bit about this weight loss craze and how people are using injections and everything. And let's talk about it because you're public facing and there are a lot of people who feel pressure to lose weight and they're using all these injections and drugs. What are your thoughts around people using the injectables, the drugs and whatnot versus the old school way of exercising, dieting, stuff like that?
I would say for each their own. People have very personal reasons, and weight loss is a very personal journey, just as weight gain is personal. We all internalize these issues differently. At the end of the day, we want to be healthy. And people have their different interpretations of weight loss, why they want to lose weight. Some because they want to look good, others because perhaps their cholesterol is at an high, or, they have hypertension. But whatever it is, I believe that if it's guided medically, I mean, we've done those stories here. If it's guided by a medical profession, it is approved, then why not? I really would say that that's a very personal one, and for each their own.
Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about being in the spotlight. I was at a conference some time back, and I remember Caroline Mutuka was giving a talk and she was saying, prominence is a light, but it can also be heat. So depending on how you use it, what has your experience been being in the spotlight? Because people tend to criticize people in the limelight a lot more than people who are in the background. What have been some of your biggest lessons on how to take the heat and also just keep your confidence up? Because people can be bullies sometimes. Some are supportive, some are not, right?
Well, Claire, I would say fame, it's given me a voice, and for that, I say kudos. I would do this any other day. But it can also be a magnifier of our mistakes. And at the end of the day, I stay true to who I am. I take criticism. I know how to block noise, and I know the criticism that is really directed at taking me in the right direction. At the end of the day, we are called to a certain standard as journalists, as people that you see on your screens every day. But we're also human. But then along the way, you learn, to watch your steps. And because trust me, and this is completely human, anytime we err, especially those of us whose yardsticks are a certain length, we persecute ourselves even more than the critics. And so I believe that for me, it's been a journey of learning, a journey of also staying true to self, because at the end of the day, I know my value system, I know who I am. But then again, how to sieve the noise, which is just noise, from the constructive criticism is something that you have to weigh. And that comes with a lot of reading, a lot of meditation, a lot of, again, self-seeking, and a lot of, interacting with the mentors as well, people who have done it, that are there, that have walked the same journey, probably faced critics, be they not be as harsh as those that we face being in the limelight.
Okay. Not to relive moments, but is there any one particular moment you're looking at me that you say that was a real rough moment and you really had to gather your inner strength to get through that moment as a public-facing, as a famous figure? Mm-hmm. Is there one that just sticks out and you're like, what?
No, because I've learned along the way to sieve negativity. Because if we had to keep replaying things that people have said or assumed, then, so I probably know. I really am a firm believer in positive energy, positive thoughts. Trust you me, if you and I had a disagreement over something today, I would not take it personally. I would go back, take a step back, and weigh what it is that we were talking about, what the disagreement was about, and move on from that and really pick the positives out of, because there's always some sense in things that people say. And that is why I'm saying sieve the sense out of the noise. So for me, no, I don't really have any particular one. Maybe previously, yes. I mean, it may have gotten to me, but that usually lasts about 24, 48 hours and I'm good.
Nice. That calls for maturity. Yeah. Now let's talk about the evolving media landscape. You've been in this business for a long time. What do you see as some of the trends that are happening? What are the biggest changes you've experienced being in broadcast media over the years? And what do you see is the future in the next 5 to 10 years? We're talking about AI, we're talking about digital and stuff like that. What are the biggest trends and what have been the biggest changes so far for you?
Well, the fact that our audiences are very reactive. We don't have a passive society anymore in terms of how they consume news, and therefore that comes with redirection in terms of how we also package our content. Previously I feel that news was linear in the sense that you would almost know that at 9 p.m. that's the first time you're interacting with a story, with a big story. But now, by the time it's 9 p.m. Primetime news, you've probably seen what's happening around the Uganda election. The internet has been shut down. This is happening. There's so many students that have not made the cutout point to university because of the KCSE results. So how to package the news in a way that is fresh, in a way that you're relaying information that is not already out there. I feel that we have audiences that are now part of the news collecting process as well, whether it's with their phones, on social media, on podcasts. People are talking about issues that make us have to rethink our news content in terms of what we're going to be saying, during our studio interviews, during our news generating process. And so, I mean, the news has evolved in a way that I believe has really forced traditional broadcasters, such as myself, I call myself a traditional broadcaster, to take a step back and think about how to relay news differently, how to do things that will be fresh and unique, that will have people perhaps getting fresh and new information out of us. And that's why you see a lot of analysis on the news. That's why you see a lot of going beyond the story. So yes, a lot of people have not made the cut for the university intake. So what then? What are the solutions over that? So just going a step ahead, because we're running a race against, digital broadcasters out here who are running with the news on the spot right before we know what's happening. Citizen journalism really taking over. And I think that's incredible because it also feeds into our content. We get a lot of news content from that as well. So interesting to watch, interesting times.
Okay, and what do you see as your role in the evolving ecosystem the next 5 to 10 years? What do you see yourself doing?
Really interesting. Really, it's reinventing yourself and really being on the lookout. Observing trends and not being asleep to those. Just you have this She Means business, and this is huge. The process that it takes to create this content, your passion for it, Claire, and I know you've done it now for a year plus, but just looking at trends as well, we have a very promising new anchor, Emmanuel Ndongo, and every time he comes into the studio, he comes with his ring light, and he's usually doing behind the scenes. So it's really observing and learning from that. My approach to the new trends would probably be repackaging myself in a way that does not get me caught flat-footed. New trends are emerging. Am I up to speed with them? Absolutely, I'm up to speed with them. But I still have a space here in terms of my voice as a field reporter and as an on-screen journalist as well, as a news anchor. But that does not mean I'm not privy to what's happening. It's a matter of reinventing myself. And when the time comes, I'll probably be putting out a lot of things that I have in the pipeline. I've done those already right here on Citizen Digital, started a real estate show, walked my pregnancy journey with Kenyans, and that was brave.
Yes.
Because pregnancy is sensitive. But yes, I have one foot in the digital space. So it's just looking out for new trends and not really being a wallflower as all these things are happening. And I really do consume a lot of your content as well, especially on She Means business.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, let's talk a little bit about the pressures that come with being in this space. And we spoke a little bit about them. But, people have this idea that, these people who are famous are rolling in money and stuff like that. So would you say you've faced the pressures, to live a certain lifestyle, keep up with the Joneses? How do you keep yourself level-headed and at the same time not succumb to pressure to live a certain lifestyle? Because some people, are out here taking loans to put a certain, image out there. How do you balance that?
I'm very well brought up. I am very well brought up. I am what you see. And that truly is something that a lot of people that are close to me, can prove. How I package myself gratefully is because I'm a product of, again, a team that has nurtured me into looking a certain way, speaking a certain way, dressing a certain way. And so this that you see is really a product of grooming, right from when I was about 21 years old to who I am now. But truly, in terms of societal pressures, we work hard. We live within our means. We save, because that's very important. Such careers come with a lot of expectations as well, from the car that you drive to the neighborhood that you live in. But really staying true to yourself is very important because, again, a good dancer knows when to exit the scene. So what happens then? Do you have savings? Do you have a plan? Do you have extra income generating activities that you're involved in? Even if it's farming, I mean, it's those are good conversations to have because, again, Claire, we're aging. And again, reinvention comes with financial discipline where, again, I remember when I was 21 years old, perhaps my spending habits were not what they are now. Now, now when I see a good shoe or a good bag, or even the latest MacBook, I'm thinking, do I need it? What's the plan? Do I have the funds for it? How does that eat into my resources? Is it necessary? So it comes with maturity and also comes with lessons learned along the way that financial discipline really at the end of the day is very important.
So being prudent, basically, the decisions you made at 21 are not the ones you made right now. And I like the way you've brought up the issue of aging. We're not really aging, but anyway, I wouldn't put it that way.
Yeah.
But what would you say? Sometimes people feel pressure, and this is more so for women. When they get to a certain age, it's like, oh my goodness, there's a pressure, and especially in a front-facing kind of career that you're in. Have you ever felt that pressure that, oh my goodness, there's a certain date by which I need to be moving on to the next thing? Or is it like I am still doing what I'm doing and I'm still here? Because I look at people like internationally, people like Gayle King. I mean, she's 70, she's still on air, But do you feel there is a certain pressure and there's a certain way that people tend to look for a certain age of people for front facing? Because, you know, they also say experience cannot be discounted, right?
Yeah.
But there's also that pressure for women specifically. What would you say are your thoughts?
I believe that if you work hard and you know, your value is evident to those that you're a contributor to, then I mean, we know we have, you know, civil servants who at some point have to retire. I believe the fatigue at the end of the day checks in, and you cannot compete with that. I mean, when it's time to exit, you know it's time to exit. But again, just going back to the fire in your belly, I still have so much to say. Whether it's not on, you know, the TV platform, could be on a podcast, it could be on many other platforms. I still have so much to say as a journalist. And therefore, for me, until the fire stops burning, then I'm keeping at it because it's something that I enjoy doing. Last year, Claire, I went to, and this is something that I'm so passionate about, marginalized communities. When I go to these communities and I interact with parts of Kenya that don't look like part of Kenya, that reminds me why I started in the first place. Just having the opportunity to be able to go to these far-flung areas, out of the resources, of course, that big brands like these are able to offer. That reminds me why I started, and bringing those stories to life for me, you know, makes it all worthwhile and keeps me wanting to go. The energy surge, the burst of energy that I experience when I found, for instance, children getting immunized under trees, and that was during the transition from the NHIF to SHA, and it was puzzling to me how we were having such conversations when things like those were still happening out there. And we know that there's been a lot of funding issues, you know, with the United States government pulling out on funding, and that was when I was doing that story. But that was puzzling. And, you know, when you get to interact with such issues as a passionate journalist, passionate as I am about human interest stories, then you're just like, okay, 5 more years, maybe 3 more years, maybe 2 more. Yeah, because these stories have to be told. And if I don't tell them, then who else? You know, it's hot out there. It's far away. But if you have a passion for it, then why stop while you can still tell those stories?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now let's shift gears a little bit to now balancing between professional life and your personal life. You talked about, you know, coming back after maternity leave. You have 2 children. What has that been like in this very fast-paced industry, balancing between raising children and also making sure that your career is on track? What have been the biggest lessons for you? And have you had regrets? Because I remember there was one episode I was speaking with one lady and she was like, you know, she pursued her career so much, by the time she stopped to look at what was happening, her kids had grown up. It's like, do we know each other? So what have been the trade-offs for you? What have been the wins and what have been the lessons in balancing or integrating?
Yeah, I mean, the guilt, yes, does show up when you have to be gone. I remember covering the Olympics in London and being gone for almost 3 weeks with you know, a newborn. It was a newborn. He was about maybe 2 years old, and that comes with guilt. But then again, we were running a campaign called the Proud Mothers Campaign, the mothers of the athletes, and it was amazing to see, you know, an elderly lady from a village, perhaps in Uasin Gishu, boarding a flight for the first time, going to London and watching her son, you know, win that gold. And so, you know, incredible moments, but then again, you know, the guilt checks in. What I've learned is that because as a journalist, you do have to show up, and more so for women, because again, the ratio between the men and the women in most media houses in the country is really, you know, perhaps 7 men, 3 women, that you have to show up and you have to work hard. But aside from that, I've learned to ask for help and for support from the extended family. My mom, who herself is a career lady, but, she's been fundamental in terms of the roles she's played in supporting me when she's in the country, when she's around, as well as really investing in good help, people that you treat well, that will in turn, treat your family well, making them part of the family so that they're able to play that complementary role when you have late nights or early mornings or long days, or when you're out in the field and are unable to be home for days. So I think that at the end of the day, I've been able to juggle that fairly well, with two incredibly smart boys that still know mommy. Mommy is on Citizen, but mommy at the end of the day has to come home, put on her dera, and make us, have whatever it is I make them that they love. So yeah.
That's awesome. And let me just double down on that a little bit, because you said getting good help is important and treating them like family. There are people who have two different thoughts. There are those who say, your nanny is part of your family. And then there are others who are like, why are you calling her auntie? And to me, I'm like, she's your family because they are raising the most important person in or people in your life. What are your thoughts around the boundaries that you have with your nanny? Because they are taking care of your babies, but at the same time, you don't want to bring a lot of familiarity.
Yeah. I mean, also just be the parent. Do not relegate the parenting role to, things like homework, for instance, church on Sundays. Just play in the best way that you can your role as a parent. Because remember, these are parents too, or at least most of them are. And they're stepping out from their parenting roles to come and support you. So don't sit back and allow your help, to take over in things that you could easily do. Tired as you may be after a long day, I mean, there's got to be a very healthy balance there where you're not sending the message that you're here and, by the way, you're the mom as long as I'm at work, or they're there to support you, really, not to take up your role as mom or dad. So, blending them within the family, comes with boundaries where they should know that, there's certain limitations. For instance, for me, I believe in, because I have a fairly young child, that bath time is with mommy, homework is with mommy, signing of the diary is by mommy, unless I'm really away, in which case then, do we have a digital signature? No, I mean, somebody would have to do that. So yes, it's really having a healthy balance where your role as a parent is really observed and really, really in a disciplined way. We have a social life as well, especially for me. I do like to step out with my friends once in a while, but how many times do you do that in a week? Our weekdays strictly for work and home is a Saturday for stepping out briefly with friends and being home in good time so that you can go to church on Sunday. So, just that very healthy balance. Because remember, there's also a message you're sending to the people that are working for you in terms of, how you carry yourself around. Are you ever home? Really, respect begets respect, and they will respect you if you respect your home, if you respect them, and if you're also present for your children.
Yeah, I like that. Now let's go to a quick fire round. What book are you reading right now?
Atomic Habits, but I haven't gotten past the first page. It's my new January read.
Okay. What's the biggest challenge you're facing raising a teenager right now?
Wow. So communication. You have to be very careful how you communicate with teenagers because you can easily hit a wall. So it's not talking down on them, but finding an approach that's friendlier. I'm learning to do that. And that's going well. Because back in the day, perhaps when we were being brought up, the approach would be like, you did and you didn't, and I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. But with teenagers in this day and age, I mean, you learn to speak their language so that you are guiding but not talking down, not constantly criticizing. And really, at the end of the day, looking at teenage struggles, especially, I know for girls it's a different dynamic from boys, but really instilling in them virtues that remind them who they are. Self-esteem being very, very important when you're raising teenagers, because again, in school they deal with things to do with peer pressure, bullying, who said what. It's a lot. Girls, boys. So really, this is new for me. I feel like I was just a teenager the other day. So this is new for me. I'm having to raise a teenager now.
Yeah, and it's actually not just teenagers, even the younger ones. It's gentle parenting. You're not telling them, you're negotiating, so it's a challenge. Tell us, what do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? Wow, that's interesting. I don't know. I mean, have I had fun in a long time? I love to travel when I can. I like to explore a new city, whether it's locally or internationally. That is something, and I love to travel by myself. That's something that I do. I love solo drives. That's something that I love to do. And because my father, when we were growing up, loved rumba, I like to play a rumba song, and half of them I don't know, but it's really something that brings such beautiful memories back. And so that's pretty much what I do for fun.
What would you say your personality is? A solo traveler, what's your personality?
I look like an extrovert, but I really am not. I think I'm in between. What do you call those? Yes, I'm an ambivert. Yes. I have extreme highs and extreme lows. And so there are days when I just really, I'm not chatty, and I'm best just by myself, meditating or reflecting or watching something, a podcast, or watching a movie, or taking a solo drive. And then there are days that I really want people around me. I'll call my friends and I'll be like, what are we doing today? Where are we going? What are we eating? What are we going to watch, for a movie? So there's those days. But I think most of the time you will find me by myself. If not with the person that's closest to me, my best friend. That's pretty much a typical Lillian day.
Okay, and why is it that you've not had fun in a while? Is it lack of time, or what's that about?
I'm busy.
You're busy.
I'm working, I'm parenting, I am figuring out the next, season in my life. And so I think I'm in a very reflective stage in my life, which doesn't really allow for a lot of noise, which is why perhaps I'm saying that I haven't had time for a lot of fun. And even with my travels that I talk about, and it's not like we have a lot of time at work for the travels anyway, but say I'm on leave and I do take a trip, it's usually because I'm in that very reflective state of mind where I need time to myself to unpack, to just think through stuff, look at, where I've come from, where I'm headed, and journal.
And you've spoken a little bit about it, but let's talk about unpacking the next phase for Lillian. I know I'm harping on it, but what can you reveal? I know there are things you're not going to tell us, but what can you reveal in those times of reflection? What is it looking like for Lillian? Yeah.
So, I'll easily say this. First of all, it's got to be within this space of storytelling and advocacy, and really being a voice in whatever platform that will be. And really, I continue to be very passionate about that. But aside from that, it's legacy, and continuing with my father's legacy, so my father was an advocate of the High Court, but he passed away. But he left a beautiful farm in Machakos, beautiful, beautiful farm. We have horticulture there. We have, agribusiness really, which my mother, bless her, despite her busy schedule, has kept afloat. And I've started taking a keen interest in that because of, Claire, how when a plant is, how a seed is planted and how it just grows into this beautiful plant. I feel like that was my father's plan for us. That was a legacy that he wanted, because Ukambani is very dry. But when you look at where we come from, it's a green area which has got this beautiful mango trees. It's got this beautiful orchard where we have an array of fruits. So I'd really like to explore agriculture over the weekends, just plant a thing or two and see where that goes. That's something that I want to get my fingers in the soil and play around with that and see where that takes me, because I hear it's also very therapeutic. Every time we take a drive with my mom to the village, we come back feeling so refreshed, because it's green and because you get to water a plant, you get to take a walk around and just see the beauty that is in nature. And so that's something that I'd really like to explore, but primarily my main focus right now is continuing to be a voice.
So over 15 years within the media industry, who have been some of the best interviews that you've had, and why do they stand out for you?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I will say there are many, but the ones that stand out, Chief Justice Martha Koome, over the controversial President William Ruto win, and in the Supreme Court, ruling in favor of that win, and it's just her opening up around controversial statements that were felt to be controversial, hot air, wild goose chase. Her really unpacking that for us and opening up as the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya and saying, look, it is not what it looked like. I think that was very, very powerful, and of course the reviews were great. Mama Ida Odinga, after the death of her son, Fidel, bless his soul, that was powerful, because here was a mother grieving the loss of a son, and no mother is ever really prepared to say goodbye to her son. So that as well, very, very powerful. Lupita Nyong'o, after her Oscar win, looking at our Kenyan very own, and this was me in New York after the win. This was like, and literally after calling her father Anyang Nyong, the interview was made possible very quickly, and we're able to go to New York and cover that, I think, about 2 days after she won. So that was huge, just speaking to a Kenyan, one of our very own, who had achieved all of that. I remember Kipchumba Murkomen, again, Interior Security, CS, unpacking for us the 2010 Constitution. It was such a bulky document, but he walked us through that entire, at the time he was a lecturer, a law lecturer, and he walked us through that entire document and really unpacked it for us and made it easier to understand. So, there are many, but then again, the voices of the people, so many stories that I've done, so many interviews that have shaped my journey as a journalist, and that I'm incredibly, incredibly proud of.
Awesome. Yeah. Now, as we wrap up, tell me what success means to you.
Mm-hmm. Success to me means showing up. It means never giving up, despite what the obstacles may be. And then again, very importantly, we spoke about this, reinventing yourself. Never getting too comfortable with the norm, not just showing up because you have to show up or because you're earning a salary, but really, really reinventing yourself and staying at the top of your game. Discipline being very key for me, and that's why I talk about showing up. Never giving up, because the voices will be many, but then again, for women, we're told that we have to work twice harder than the men. And so that consistency comes from, in a nutshell, all those factors that I've mentioned that define what success is for me.
Okay, now look into this camera and speak to a young lady coming up who would probably want to get into the media industry, or is just trying to rise up their career. What is that one piece of advice that you would give her about staying power, about reinvention, about discipline to get to where you want to get?
Dear young lady, you have what it takes. Be authentic and don't think that you know it all. Seek the help of mentors. Your network is really equivalent to your net worth. So look out for people, mentors, people that you admire, that will guide you along the path to greatness. And always remember that your dreams are valid and you're exactly who you think you are.
Awesome. We've been speaking to Lillian Muli. Your dreams are valid and you are exactly who you think you are. Be disciplined, be consistent, and you'll get to where you want to be. This has been She Means Business. I have been your host, Claire Munde. Until next time, have a good one.